The Hexan Empire ruled the stars for over 10,000 years. Their warships roamed the galaxy, bringing planet after planet under their control. No race had ever stood against them and won. Fleet Admiral Zorak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes. His uniform sparkled with medals from 100 conquests. He looked at the blue-green planet on the view screen with cold interest. "How primitive are these humans?" he asked his science officer. Science Officer Melix bowed slightly. "They appear to have basic spaceflight capabilities, Admiral. They have small settlements on their moon and neighboring planet. Our scans detect radio signals and some energy readings. Nothing impressive." Zorax nodded. This would be an easy conquest, like all the others. The standard procedure was simple. Show up with an overwhelming force, demand surrender, demonstrate power, accept their submission. If they resisted, destroy a city or two. They always gave in after that. "Prepare the diplomatic fleet," Zorax ordered. 200 warships should be sufficient to make our point. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Soon, 200 massive warships, each the size of a small city, prepared to jump through hyperspace toward the human solar system. "This species will make a fine addition to our labor forces," Zorax said. "Plot a course for Earth." Commander Patricia Wells sipped her coffee on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Indomitable. At 42, she had served in the EDF for 20 years. Her short brown hair had some gray at the temples, and laugh lines framed her eyes. She watched the main screen showing the vast emptiness of space near Neptune's orbit. "Commander, we're picking up hyperspace disturbances," said Lieutenant Greg Simmons from the sensor station. He was younger than Patricia by a decade, with dark skin and a calm demeanor that made him excellent at his job. "How many?" Patricia asked, setting down her coffee. Greg studied his readings. "A lot. Initial count suggests nearly 200 vessels, large ones." Patricia nodded. "Inform Earth Command. Looks like our visitors are right on schedule." She opened a channel to the rest of her small fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Wells. Our guests are arriving. Remember the plan. No aggressive moves. Let them make their show." The 12 ships of the human defense fleet waited calmly. They were sleek and small compared to what was coming, painted white with blue EDF markings. Each carried only a small crew of 20 to 30 people. Lieutenant Alice Garcia at Communications turned to Patricia. "Commander, Earth Command acknowledges. Admiral Rogers says to proceed as planned." "Perfect," Patricia said, leaning back in her chair. "Now we wait." Sotsir. Crew watched as space seemed to tear open 2,000 kilometers away. Massive ships emerged from hyperspace in a formation designed to impress and intimidate. They were dark gray, with red markings, covered in visible weapons. Each one dwarfed the largest human vessel by at least 5 times. "They certainly like to make an entrance," Greg said, raising an eyebrow. "Some things are universal," Patricia replied with a small smile. "How many civilizations do you think they've scared with this routine?" "Judging by their confidence? Probably hundreds," Greg said. The Hexan ships arranged themselves in a half-circle facing the human fleet. Lights flashed across their hulls in patterns meant to showcase their power. The flagship, nearly twice the size of the others, moved to the center position. "They've locked weapons on us," reported Security Officer Kyle Peterson, a stocky man, with a military haircut. Despite his words, he didn't sound concerned. "Let them," Patricia said calmly. "Remember, everyone, they think this is first contact. We play along." "Incoming transmission," Alice announced. "Visual and audio. Put it on screen," Patricia ordered, straightening her uniform. The main screen changed to show Admiral Zorak standing proudly on his bridge, surrounded by officers in ornate uniforms. The bridge was enormous with dramatic lighting and elaborate control stations. "Primitive beings of Earth," Zorax began in a booming voice that had been translated into English. "I am Fleet Admiral Zorax of the mighty Hexan Empire, rulers of 5,000 worlds across this galaxy. We have observed your planet and determined it worthy of our attention. You now face the most powerful military force in known space." "Patricia, maintained a neutral expression, though several of her crew members had to look down to hide their smiles. You have two options, Zorax continued. Surrender your world and accept integration into our glorious empire, where you will serve as our subjects but receive our protection and guidance, or face total annihilation. To demonstrate our power, the Admiral made a dramatic gesture. One of his ships broke formation and moved toward a small, uninhabited moon orbiting Neptune. A red beam shot from the ship, striking the moon. Seconds later, the moon's surface exploded, sending chunks of rock floating into space. That was only a fraction of our capability, Zorax said proudly. You have 1 Earth hour to surrender. If you resist, we will target your settlements on Mars next, then your moon, and finally your homeworld. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Lieutenant Greg Simmons let out a small laugh he couldn't contain. Any more? They destroyed Nesso? He asked, referring to the tiny moon. That's their big demonstration? It's just a chunk of ice barely 100 kilometers wide. Patricia allowed herself a smile now. They did their homework, at least. They picked an uninhabited moon. What should we tell Earth Command? Alice asked. The standard response, Patricia said. I'll handle the communication. She straightened her uniform and signaled for Alice to open a channel to the Hexen flagship. Admiral Zorax appeared on screen again, clearly expecting to see fear, or at least respect, on the human commander's face. Instead, Patricia looked calm, almost amused. Admiral Zorax of the Hexen Empire, she said politely. I am Commander Patricia Wells of the Earth Defense Force. We've received your message and demonstration. And your answer? Zorax demanded. We would like to propose a different option, Patricia said. Perhaps we could show you a small demonstration of our own capabilities before you make assumptions about our civilization. Zorax looked surprised but quickly hid it. You may attempt to impress us, but it will not change your situation. Thank you, Admiral, Patricia said with a slight nod. Captain Miller, you're up. One of the small human ships, the EDF Relentless, moved forward. It approached a medium-sized asteroid about 3 kilometers across. This is Captain Frank Miller, a new voice said over the communication. Beginning demonstration. The human ship didn't fire any visible weapon. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire asteroid began to glow slightly. Seconds later, it simply dissolved into a cloud of dust. No energy weapons were fired, one of Zorax's officers reported with confusion. Patricia smiled at the Admiral's bewildered expression. Perhaps we should talk more, Admiral. There seems to be a misunderstanding about our respective places in the galaxy. Admiral Zorax stared at the cloud of dust that had once been a 3-kilometer asteroid. His long fingers gripped the armrests of his command chair. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. The humans had destroyed the asteroid without firing a single weapon that his sensors could detect. What just happened? He demanded of his science officer. Melik studied his instruments with wide eyes. Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors detected a brief energy pattern, but it doesn't match any weapon signature in our database. It appears they somehow altered the molecular structure of the asteroid itself. Zorax frowned. This was not proceeding according to protocol. The humans should be begging for mercy by now, not demonstrating superior technology. But he couldn't show weakness in front of his crew. A simple trick, he announced loudly. Clearly designed to confuse us. He turned to his communications officer. Open the channel again. Commander Patricia Wells appeared on screen, still with that same calm expression that was beginning to irritate Zorax. An interesting display, Zorax said, but it changes nothing. The Hexen Empire has conquered species with all manner of unusual abilities. You will still submit. Patricia exchanged glances with her lieutenant before responding. Admiral, there seems to be a significant misunderstanding here. Perhaps we should meet in person to discuss the situation more clearly. Meet? There is nothing to discuss. You will surrender or you'll destroy another moon. Patricia finished for him. Admiral, we've been tracking your empire's movements for centuries. We know your standard conquest protocol. We know your language, your culture, your technology. We've simply chosen not to engage until now. Zorax felt a chill run through him. You lie. We would have detected any human observation vessels. Patricia smiled. Lieutenant Garcia, please share the historical records. The screen split to show a series of recordings. Zorax recognized Hexen ships from decades ago, some even from before his birth. The recordings showed Hexen military parades, council meetings, even classified fleet movements. Some footage was clearly taken from inside Hexen facilities. This is impossible, Zorax whispered. No, just technology beyond your current understanding, Patricia said. Admiral, we're not a primitive species ripe for conquest. We're an advanced civilization that has deliberately maintained a low profile in the galaxy. Zorax struggled to process this information. It violated everything he knew about his empire's superiority. If what you say is true, why haven't you expanded beyond your solar system? Our scouts found only minor settlements on nearby planets. A new face appeared on screen beside Commander Wells. It was a woman with olive skin and curly black hair pulled back from her face. Allow me to introduce Dr. Olivia Martinez, our leading xenoanthropologist, Patricia said. Admiral Zorax, Dr. Martinez said in perfect Hexen language. Your confusion is understandable. Your empire evaluates advancement by territorial expansion and visible infrastructure. We chose a different path. Zorax was shocked to hear his native tongue spoken so perfectly by a human. How do you know our language? I've studied your people for 30 years, Dr. Martinez replied, still in Hexen. Your language, history, biology, social structures. You're quite fascinating. Your empire began as a group of nomadic tribes on Hexen Prime, correct? Before uniting under Emperor Kraz the Unifier 12,000 years ago? Zorax could only nod. This was basic Hexen history taught to schoolchildren. What would you say if I told you humans have visited your homeworld? That we've walked among your people, studied your achievements firsthand? Dr. Martinez asked. I would say you're lying, Zorax replied, but his voice lacked conviction. From another human ship, the EDF Intrepid, Captain Julia Lee joined the conversation. She was a short woman with long dark hair tied back in a neat braid. Admiral, she said, who says we haven't expanded beyond our solar system? What you see here is just our greeting party. Zorax's tactical officer leaned close to him. Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessels. They appear to be communicating with something, but there's nothing else in this system that our sensors can detect. For the first time in his career, Zorax felt genuine uncertainty. The standard conquest protocol wasn't working. These humans knew too much, had technology his science officers couldn't explain, and seemed completely unafraid of his fleet of 200 warships. Commander Wells, he said finally, I propose a temporary cease of hostilities while we clarify the situation. That sounds reasonable, Patricia agreed. We have no desire for conflict, Admiral. I will consult with Imperial Command, Zorax said stiffly. Of course, Patricia nodded. We'll wait for your response. When the communication ended, Zorax turned to his senior staff. Opinions? His tactical officer spoke first. They're bluffing. If they had a real military force, we would detect it. The science officer disagreed. Admiral, their technology is clearly advanced beyond ours in some areas. Those recordings were authentic. Somehow they've been watching us without our knowledge. Could they have allies we don't know about? Zorax asked. Possibly, the science officer admitted. But we've mapped most of this galaxy. Any civilization advanced enough to be a threat would have been noticed. While the Hexen command staff debated, the human fleet remained in position. On board the Indomitable, Patricia Wells called a meeting with her captains via secure communication. They're confused, Frank Miller said with a grin. Did you see the Admiral's face when we showed him those recordings? Don't get overconfident, Patricia warned. 200 warships is still 200 warships, even if their technology is less advanced than ours. Greg Simmons looked up from his datapad. Earth Command has activated Phase 2. The stealth observation platforms are moving into position around the Hexen fleet. If they make any aggressive moves, we'll know immediately. And the Whisper Network? Patricia asked. Online and ready. Alice Garcia confirmed. All ships can transition on your command. Good. Patricia nodded. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Dr. Martinez studied the feed showing the Hexan flagship. Their body language suggests internal conflict. The Admiral is traditional, trained to follow protocol, but he's smart enough to recognize something unusual is happening. He's frightened, but won't admit it to his crew. Will he attack? Patricia asked. Hard to say, Martinez replied. Hexan military doctrine heavily punishes failure to follow procedures. If he returns without our surrender or our destruction, he might face serious consequences. After an hour of waiting, the Hexan flagship signaled for communication again. Admiral Zorax appeared on screen, his posture rigid. Commander Wells, I have new terms. You will send a representative to my vessel to explain your claims and technology. We will then determine if your species qualifies for special consideration within the Empire. Patricia smiled politely. Admiral, I have a counter-proposal. You will join me aboard the Indomitable with a small security detail of your choosing. We have much to show you that might change your perspective on our relationship. You expect me to board your vessel? Zorax asked incredulously. You invited me to yours, Patricia pointed out. And I believe you'll find what we have to share very enlightening. Zorax narrowed his eyes. And if I refuse? Then we remain at this impasse, Patricia said simply. Though I should mention that continuing to aim weapons at our fleet might be interpreted as hostile by our other defensive systems. What other defensive systems? Zorax demanded. Patricia just smiled. Why don't you come see for yourself, Admiral? Admiral Zorax stood in his private chamber facing his three most trusted advisors. His decision to board the human vessel went against all Imperial protocols, but something told him this situation required a different approach. This could be a trap, warned Security Chief Vexus, a battle-scarred veteran with cybernetic implants covering half his face. If they wanted to attack, they could have done so already, Zorax replied. Their technology clearly surpasses ours in some areas. Science Officer Melix nodded in agreement. Admiral, I believe we need to learn more about their capabilities. This may be our only opportunity. I'll accompany you with a full security detail, Vexus insisted. No. Commander Wells specified a small group. I'll take you, Melix, and 4 guards, Zorax decided. Prepare the shuttle. As his advisors left to make arrangements, Zorax stared out the viewport at the small human ships. In his 30 years of service to the Empire, he had never faced a situation like this. His career, possibly his life, depended on making the right choice. An hour later, Zorax's shuttle approached the human flagship. Despite being much smaller than his own vessel, the Indomitable had an elegant design that suggested advanced engineering. The shuttle was guided into a docking bay that opened smoothly in the ship's hull. Commander Patricia Wells waited in the docking bay with Lieutenant Greg Simmons and 2 unarmed security officers. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decoration, unlike the elaborate Imperial uniforms of her visitors. Admiral Zorax, welcome aboard the Indomitable. Patricia greeted him with a small bow, a gesture she knew was respected in Hexan culture. Zorax returned the bow stiffly. Commander Wells, please follow me, Patricia said, leading them from the docking bay into the ship. Zorax and his team observed everything carefully as they walked through clean, well-lit corridors. The technology they saw was sleek and minimalist, with none of the dramatic flair that Hexan engineering favored. What surprised Zorax most was how few crew members they encountered. Your ship seems understaffed, he commented. Patricia smiled. We have exactly the number of people we need. Much of our ship operates autonomously. She led them to a room with a large circular table in the center. The walls were plain white with no visible technology. Before we continue, I'd like to introduce you to some colleagues, Patricia said. As she spoke, portions of the wall shimmered and revealed view screens, showing the faces of several humans. Captain Frank Miller of the Relentless you've already seen. This is Captain Julia Lee of the Intrepid, Dr. Olivia Martinez, who you've met, and Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez. The engineer was a man with tan skin and gray at his temples. He nodded politely to the Admiral. Now, Patricia continued, let's address the situation directly. Admiral, Your empire has conquered hundreds of species using the same approach. You arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate your power, and demand submission. It has worked because most young spacefaring races are easily intimidated. The Empire brings order and protection, Zorax said automatically, and heavy taxation, resource extraction, and cultural suppression, Dr. Martinez added. Zorax frowned. You speak as if you've witnessed our methods firsthand. We have, Patricia confirmed. For centuries, humans have been observing galactic civilizations, including yours. Impossible, Security Chief Vexus growled. Our detection systems are the most advanced in the galaxy, Chief Engineer Rodriguez spoke up. Not compared to dimensional pocket technology. Dimensional what? Science Officer Melix asked, his interest clearly piqued. Sam Rodriguez made a gesture with his hand. The center of the table glowed, and a holographic display appeared, showing complex mathematical equations and diagrams. Around 600 years ago, Earth scientists discovered that space isn't just three-dimensional. Reality consists of multiple layers or pockets existing alongside each other. We developed technology to create temporary passages between these dimensional pockets. You're describing some form of hyperspace travel, Melix said dismissively. We've mastered that technology centuries ago. Sam shook his head. No, hyperspace bends regular space to create shortcuts. Dimensional pockets are completely separate realities. When our ships travel, they don't move through space at all. They simply step sideways into another dimension and then back into normal space at their destination. That's how we've been able to observe your empire without detection, Patricia explained. Our observation vessels exist partially in another dimension, making them completely invisible to your sensors. Zorax tried to process this information. If what you say is true, then humanity has spread far beyond this solar system. Yes, Patricia said simply. She nodded to Lieutenant Simmons, who activated another holographic display. The room darkened, and suddenly they were surrounded by stars, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The blue points of light represent confirmed human settlements or observation posts, Patricia explained. Zorax and his officers stared in shock. Thousands of blue dots appeared throughout the galaxy, many deep within Imperial territory. Some were even near the Hexen homeworld. This is a deception, Vexus insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. I assure you it's not, Patricia replied calmly. Humanity has been a spacefaring species for much longer than you realized. We've simply chosen to remain hidden until now. But why reveal yourselves to us now? Zorax asked. What changed? Your expansion pattern, Patricia answered. Your recent conquests have been pushing toward the Orion Spur, where one of our major colony clusters is located. If you had continued, you would have eventually stumbled upon it. We preferred to make introductions on our terms. And what are your terms? Zorax asked cautiously. Peace and mutual recognition, Patricia said. We have no interest in conquering your empire or disrupting your society. We simply want to establish diplomatic relations as equals. Equals? The empire does not recognize equals, Vexus said sharply. Then, perhaps it's time for the empire to evolve, Patricia suggested. Admiral, humanity could have destroyed your fleet the moment it entered our solar system. We chose conversation instead. Zorax thought carefully before responding. What you're proposing is unprecedented. No species has ever been granted equal status with the Empire. There's a first time for everything, Patricia said with a slight smile. Chief Engineer Rodriguez touched a control on the table. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a window that hadn't been there before. Outside, space seemed to ripple and distort. What's happening? Melix asked, moving closer to the window. A demonstration, Rodriguez explained. We're creating a temporary dimensional pocket. Before their eyes, 5 massive vessels appeared where empty space had been moments before. Each was at least twice the size of Zorax's flagship, with sleek designs and no visible weapons. They moved with impossible grace, surrounding the Hexen fleet in seconds. These ships were here all along, Patricia explained. Just in a different, dimensional pocket, They could have appeared at any time, but we wanted to talk first. Zorak stared at the massive human vessels. His tactical training told him they were completely outmatched. I think, he said slowly, that I should contact Imperial Command with new information about our situation. Patricia nodded. Of course. But before you do, perhaps you'd like to see more of what humanity has to offer as potential allies rather than subjects. For the first time since entering human space, Admiral Zorax felt something new. Not fear or anger, but curiosity. Yes, he decided, I would like that very much. Admiral Zorax followed Commander Wells deeper into the human ship. Security Chief Vexus walked close behind him, constantly scanning for threats. Science Officer Melix seemed more relaxed, his eyes wide with scientific curiosity. This way to our engine room, Patricia said, leading them down a corridor that seemed to bend in ways that made Zorax slightly dizzy. Your ship's layout is unusual, Zorax commented. The Indomitable exists partially in multiple dimensions, Patricia explained. Some sections of the ship occupy different dimensional pockets at the same time. They entered a large circular chamber. Unlike the loud, hot engine rooms of Hexan ships, this one was quiet and cool. In the center floated a sphere of swirling blue and silver energy, contained within a transparent field. This is our dimensional core, Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez explained, joining them. It allows us to move between dimensional pockets and normal space. Melix approached the core, his scanner extended. Fascinating. The energy readings are unlike anything I've ever seen. Because the energy itself comes from between dimensions, Sam said. We don't burn fuel like your ships do. We harness the natural energy that exists in the spaces between realities. Unlimited power, Melix whispered. Not unlimited, Sam corrected. But very efficient. A ship this size can operate for 50 years without refueling. Vexus remained skeptical. If your technology is so advanced, why haven't you conquered the galaxy yourselves? Any species with this power would naturally expand their territory. Patricia exchanged looks with Sam before answering. That assumption reveals much about Hexan philosophy. Humans explored different paths after reaching the stars. What does that mean? Zorax asked. Let me show you, Patricia said. She led them to another room where Dr. Olivia Martinez waited. This room had comfortable seating arranged in a circle. The walls displayed images of various planets and star systems. 600 years ago, Dr. Martinez began, humans developed dimensional travel technology. Our first instinct was indeed to expand rapidly, to colonize as many worlds as we could. But we quickly discovered we weren't alone in the galaxy. The images on the wall changed to show various alien species. Some Zorax recognized, others he'd never seen before. We observed many young civilizations destroying themselves through unchecked expansion, resource depletion, and war, Martinez continued. Others, like your empire, focused on conquest. We chose a different approach. Which was? Zorax prompted. Sustainable. Development, Patricia answered. Instead of spreading thin across thousands of worlds, we established smaller, carefully planned settlements. We developed technology to live in harmony with each planet's ecosystem instead of reshaping worlds to suit us. Our role became that of observers and occasional guides, Martinez added. When we encountered primitive species on the verge of self-destruction, we sometimes intervened subtly to help them find balance. Zorax frowned. You manipulated other species? We offered choices, Patricia corrected. Always hidden, always giving them the freedom to choose their own path. We only prevented extinction-level events. The images changed again, showing various disasters being averted across different worlds. Have you interfered with the Hexan Empire? Zorax asked, suddenly suspicious. Only 3 times in your history, Martinez admitted. Once to prevent a plague that would have wiped out your species. Once to stop an asteroid impact on your homeworld. And once to prevent a civil war that would have destroyed your civilization. Zorax stared at her in shock. The great illness of the 9th dynasty, the burning sky event, the peace of Karazi, These are major historical events. Yes, Martinez nodded. And in each case, humans worked behind the scenes to guide your people toward survival. While Zorax processed this information, Patricia led them to another part of the ship. This room appeared to be a simple meeting room with a large table and chairs. Admiral, Patricia said seriously, we're approaching a crossroads in our relationship with your empire. Your current expansion path will soon bring you into contact with our more visible colonies. We can no longer remain hidden from you. What are you proposing? Zorax asked. An alliance? Patricia said simply. Equal diplomatic relations between Earth and the Hexan Empire. Impossible, Vexus said immediately. The Emperor would never agree. Why not? Patricia asked. What does the Empire gain from conflict with us? And what might it gain from alliance instead? The Empire does not form alliances, Vexus insisted. All other species are subjects. Perhaps until now, Zorax said thoughtfully. But the situation appears to be changing. Patricia nodded to Lieutenant Simmons, who activated another holographic display. This one showed technical schematics for various technologies. These are just a few innovations we could share with the Empire as allies, Patricia explained. Clean energy production, advanced medical technology, faster and more efficient space travel. Zorax studied the display carefully. The technology shown would advance the Empire by centuries. As a military man, he also recognized the strategic value of alliance with such a powerful species. And if we refuse? He asked. We won't attack, Patricia assured him. But we will defend our colonies if approached with hostility, and will continue to operate throughout your territory, unseen and undetected. Zorax turned to his officers. Your thoughts? It's a trick, Vexus said immediately. They cannot be as powerful as they claim. I disagree, Melix countered. Their technology is genuine. The dimensional pocket theory explains how they've remained hidden, and if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. Zorax nodded slowly. I must report to Imperial Command. This decision is beyond my authority. Of course, Patricia agreed. You may use our communication system to contact your superiors in private. Zorax was surprised by the offer. You would allow me to use your technology? Why not? Patricia shrugged. We have nothing to hide from you now. She led Zorax to a small private room with a communication terminal. Before leaving him alone, she paused at the door. Admiral, I understand this is difficult for you. Your entire career has been built on following Imperial protocol, but sometimes progress requires breaking with tradition. After she left, Zorax sat before the terminal. His mind raced with everything he had seen and learned. For 10,000 years, the Hexan Empire had conquered without question. The Emperor would expect him to either subjugate these humans or destroy them. But for the first time, Zorax questioned whether either option was possible or right. He activated the communication system and requested a direct line to Imperial Command. When the face of Grand Marshal Kelvor appeared on screen, Zorax took a deep breath. Marshal, I must report an unexpected development regarding the humans. They are not what we believed them to be. As Zorax explained everything he had learned, the expression on the Grand Marshal's face changed from confusion to disbelief to concern. Admiral, Kelvor said when Zorax finished his report, are you suggesting we should treat these humans as equals? I am suggesting, sir, Zorax replied, carefully, that we may have no choice. Grand Marshal Kelvor's face showed a mix of anger and concern on the communication screen. His voice was sharp when he finally spoke. Admiral Zorax, are you suggesting we abandon 10,000 years of Imperial protocol because of some human tricks? This is unacceptable. Zorax kept his voice steady. Marshal, I have seen their technology with my own eyes. Their dimensional pocket technology allows them to travel and observe without detection. They have been watching our empire for centuries. Impossible, Kelvor dismissed. No species could hide from us for so long. The evidence suggests otherwise, Zorax replied. And there is more. The humans claim to have prevented 3 major disasters in our history, including the Great Illness. This made Kelvor pause. The Great Illness had nearly destroyed the Hexan species 5,000 years ago, before a mysterious cure appeared. It was considered a miracle in Hexan history. "Your orders are clear, Admiral," Kelvor finally said. "Either secure their surrender or destroy them. The Emperor does not recognize equals." The communication ended, leaving Zorax alone with his thoughts. For the first time in his career, he considered disobeying a direct order. If he attacked the humans, his fleet would likely be destroyed. If he demanded surrender, they would refuse. When Commander Patricia Wells returned to the room, she found Zorax standing by the viewport, looking out at the stars. "Your superiors were not receptive?" she guessed. "No," Zorax admitted. 10,000 years of doing things one way creates deep habits. Patricia nodded. "Change is always difficult, especially for long-lived empires." "I have been ordered to secure your surrender or destroy your fleet," Zorax said directly. "Both options seem problematic." Patricia smiled slightly. "Yes, they would be. What will you do, Admiral?" Zorax turned to face her. "I find myself at a crossroads, Commander. Imperial protocol demands one thing, logic suggests another. Sometimes progress requires breaking with tradition," Patricia reminded him, repeating her earlier words. Zorax nodded slowly. "I would like to propose a third option." When Zorax returned to his flagship, his officers greeted him with anxious expressions. Security Chief Vexus approached immediately. "Admiral, we detected those human vessels appear from nowhere. 5 ships, larger than our own. What are your orders?" Zorax looked around his bridge. The officers and crew he saw had served under him for years, trusting his judgment. Now he was about to ask them to trust him in a decision that went against everything they had been taught. "Open a channel to the entire fleet," he ordered. When the communication was ready, Zorax stood tall before the camera. "This is Admiral Zorax. Our mission to this system has revealed unexpected information. The humans are not a primitive species, as our scouts reported. They possess technology far beyond our understanding, and have been present throughout the galaxy for centuries." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Imperial Command has ordered us to secure their surrender, or destroy them. However, I have determined that both options would lead to unnecessary loss of life and potential destruction of our fleet." Murmurs spread across the bridge. Zorax continued. "Therefore, I am initiating Protocol 72B, Emergency Diplomatic Override. I will negotiate a temporary peace agreement with the humans until Imperial Command can fully assess the situation." Security Chief Vexus stepped forward. "Admiral, Protocol 72B has never been used in the history of the fleet." "Then today will be historic," Zorax replied firmly. He opened a channel to the Indomitable. Commander Wells appeared on screen. "Commander, I propose a temporary peace agreement between our forces, to be followed by formal diplomatic discussions between representatives of Earth and the Hexan Empire." Patricia nodded. "We accept your proposal, Admiral." For the next 3 days, Zorax and a small team met with human representatives aboard a neutral vessel positioned between the two fleets. Together, they drafted a preliminary agreement recognizing both species as sovereign powers and establishing guidelines for future interactions. On the 4th day, 3 massive vessels emerged from hyperspace near the Hexan fleet. These were Imperial command ships led by Grand Marshal Kelvor himself. "Admiral Zorax," Kelvor's voice boomed across the communication channel. "You have violated direct orders and enacted an emergency protocol without proper authorization." "Marshal," Zorax replied calmly, "I acted to prevent the needless destruction of Imperial forces. The humans have technology and capabilities that make them impossible to conquer through our standard methods." "So you claim," Kelvor said. "I will judge this myself. Prepare for my arrival." When Grand Marshal Kelvor boarded the human vessel, where negotiations were taking place, he brought 10 armed guards. Tall and imposing, with ceremonial armor and a face marked by age and battle, he looked around with clear disdain. Commander Wells greeted him with the same calm politeness she had shown Zorax. "Marshal Kelvor, welcome. We appreciate you coming to discuss our agreement in person." "I have come to end this farce," Kelvor said harshly. "The Hexan Empire does not negotiate with lesser species." Patricia exchanged glances with her team before responding. Perhaps a demonstration would help clarify our position. She nodded to Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez, who pressed a control on his wrist device. Suddenly, the room they stood in seemed to shift. The walls became transparent, revealing that they were now floating in open space above the Hexan homeworld. "What trickery is this?" Kelvor demanded, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "No trick, Marshal," Patricia explained. "We've simply moved our meeting room into a dimensional pocket that currently exists near your homeworld. We can shift between locations almost instantly." Kelvor stared at the familiar continents of his planet below. "Impossible. We were light years away." "Distance is less relevant when you can step between dimensions," Patricia said. "Marshal, we could place observation posts or weapons anywhere in your empire without detection. We have chosen not to do so because we prefer peace." Sam shifted them back to their original location with another touch of his control. Kelvor was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Zorax. "You were right to enact the diplomatic protocol, Admiral." Over the next weeks, negotiations continued. When word spread throughout the Empire that a species had been granted equal status for the first time in Hexan history, reactions were mixed. Many were outraged at the break from tradition. Others were curious about these strange humans who had laughed in the face of imperial power. 6 months later, the first official Hexan embassy opened on Earth. Commander Patricia Wells attended the ceremony as Earth's new ambassador to the Hexan Empire. Lieutenant Greg Simmons, now promoted to commander of the Indomitable, watched the ceremony with her. "Do you think this alliance will last?" he asked her. "Hard to say," Patricia replied with a small smile. "But they'll either become valuable friends or learn a difficult lesson. Either way, the galaxy becomes a little more interesting." In a surprising cultural development, humans introduced the concept of humor to the Stoic Hexan. Their rigid society had never developed comedy in their culture. Slowly, some Hexan began to understand why the humans had laughed when first confronted by their intimidation tactics, and occasionally some Hexan even learned to laugh themselves.